And we're back with common factor. Oh, how's that? Okay, so common factor, factorization. This is the heart of what we're doing now. It's not products, but factorization, which feels like products in reverse. And let me not spend too much time going, oh, what's the question? But how about this? What's the highest common factor of these two terms? Okay, so you went 6 goes into both of those, x goes into both of those, y squared goes into both of those. Right, is that what you put earlier? Well, now I'm going to read yes, yes, or yes, no, or something. So 6xy squared. That's our common factor. What do we multiply this by? So maybe I'll ask this. How many terms do we have over here? Okay, therefore, how many terms should we have in the bracket? So just keep reinforcing this idea of terms. It is quite useful. So we've got 2 terms. We must have 2 terms. So we can look at the first term because that will help us get the first term over here. Seems overkill maybe for this fairly simple example, but can just be useful to make sure we got the right number of terms. So you're probably nodding your head and falling asleep, and you went, oh, that's fine. I know this was 2xy minus 6xy squared, so minus 1, close bracket, right? Done. Okay, for this one here, we got common factor of what? Well, it looks like 4xy goes into all of these, so we got 4xy. Doesn't really matter if you take out a 4xy. Perhaps you took out a minus 4xy. I'm going to do that because that looks more exciting, doesn't it? And we've got negative 4xy means that this first term can be positive 2x minus, no, plus 3y squared minus 1. Could be one way to do it if you wanted your first term to be positive in the bracket. Nothing wrong with taking out a positive 4xy. That's just a nice way to do it. Is that correct? Because it's so easy to make a little chop. So is that correct? Well, I wish you could have told me on the board and be like, no, well, there was a mistake there. Okay, then for binomials, well, what's our highest common factor of these 2 terms here now? Well, we've got this x minus 2 is over there, and this x minus 2 is over there. So we can take out an x minus 2, and therefore in our bracket, remember we had 2 terms, we must have 2 terms. So we still need to multiply it by 3x plus 4. How's that? Taking out a binomial as a common factor. Have you done that before? Yes or no? And how does it look over there? Okay, so in this next one, let's stick with this lovely green and say there's an x minus 1, there's an x minus 1. So let's take an x minus 1 out as a common factor. And now that we got our x minus 1 out as a common factor, we can see, oh, well, we're still going to multiply it by 2xy plus 4x. 2 terms in the bracket. And then we get to something a bit more interesting. And this we're going to dub the switcheroo. Before I go into the switcheroo, and this I'm only going to see afterwards, but this will be interesting. Have you seen or dealt with the switcheroo before? As I said, kind of weird now because I'm going ahead having no idea if you've said yes and now, or you're going no, but either way I'm going to go through it now for you, so lucky you, right? So we've got 2 terms here that look very similar. This x minus 3 looks very similar to 3 minus x, right? So let's see what we can do to manipulate this. X minus 3 or 3 minus, we want 3 minus x, we want it to equal x minus 3 in some shape or form. Now here we've got a positive 3 and a negative x, and here we've got a positive x and a negative 3. So in other words, we want to have a negative 3 and we want to have a positive x, because then those two will be the same. So I'm looking at kind of this left hand side, we're going to try and make equal this right hand side. So we've changed everything to be negative. In other words, negative 3, if we want it to be positive 3, or 3 we want it to be negative 3, all we had to do was multiply it by negative. So if we say, oh, these two things equal, negative negative 3 is 3, negative x is x. So in other words, this is equal, well, we could have written this the other way around. Negative x minus 3 is the same as 3 minus x. So now those things look a whole lot more similar. Okay. So 3 minus x we could just write as negative x minus 3. So 3 minus x we could write as negative x minus 3. So instead of multiplying it by positive, we could just change that to a negative and change that to x minus 3. How's that feeling so far? Again, I'm going to come back and read that and be interested. So this whole part here, positive 5x 3 minus x, is just the same as negative 5x x minus 3. Look, positive 5x times 3, 15x. Negative 5x times negative 3, 15x. 5x times negative x is the same as negative 5x times x. Okay, so for the final time, just a thumbs up or a thumbs down. How's the switcheroo? Right. So let's not belabor the switcheroo much more. Let's just go into using it and say, okay, so our common factor is x minus 3. And what do we need to multiply it by? Well, we've got a 4. And because we changed this to x minus 3, we've got minus 5x. So let's run through the next one kind of in a similar vein quickly. We've got x minus 4, and we've got 4 minus x. So the nice in-between step to do here is to go 2xy, x minus 4, minus becomes plus x minus 4. There's our common factor, x minus 4. And in brackets, we've got 2xy plus 1. Right, there's a 1 over there, plus 1. That is that. Exercise 6 just became your new best friend. How's that going so far? Quick bit of feedback. Remember, we've got the lessons to go through any of these questions that you're working on so that you can do the Edpuzzle to learn that content, and the lesson we can spend grappling with the questions from the exercise. So, as always, enjoy.